paper, UFC 235 was absolutely stacked. By the time the event wrapped up this past weekend, we all came away feeling as though that card had delivered. There are a lot of key talking points coming out of 235. Zabit scored another win against a featherweight in the upper echelon of the division. Cody Garbrandt versus Pedro Munhoz was possibly the best round of 2019. And speaking of all-out insane rounds, Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren was straight fireworks with a very controversial finish to boot. I could spend the next hour talking about the absurdity of what took place in that fight and all of the confusion surrounding it once the dust settled. Kamaru Usman just blew onto the scene and took us all by surprise when he scored a very lopsided win over Tyron Woodley to claim the welterweight championship. And John Jones, once again, just punching in another brilliant, tactical, and calculated performance against a very dangerous light heavyweight, showcasing his dominance and, as usual, making highly talented, dangerous fighters seem average at best. But when it came time to shoot this week's episode, as many interesting topics as there are to choose from, I didn't even have to think about what I was going to talk about. A total no-brainer. As much as we could delve into and pick apart any of the notable 5 moments I just talked about, it's Diego Sanchez who deserves the spotlight this week. The story of who he is, what he's done, and what he's continuing to do is nothing short of remarkable. With the TKO victory over Mickey Gall this Saturday, at 37 years young, Diego the Nightmare Sanchez scored his 18th UFC win in his 14th year in the promotion. 14 years fighting in the UFC and 17 years competing as a professional mixed martial artist. I remember watching the first Ultimate Fighter in real time back in 2005. In those days, reality TV was a relatively new concept, believe it or not. The original Tough Cast was legendary and for good reason. The mix of different characters in the house, coupled with the fact that they were cut off from the outside world, locked in a mansion together that was fully stocked with booze, and a film crew documenting the entire thing. All the while, everybody in that household having to deal with the prospect of having to fight their housemates at one point or another is what made for highly entertaining television and a show an instant hit. There are a number of things that made Season 1 special, but it's the fact that back in those days, the cast of The Ultimate Fighter was the very top talent in MMA that wasn't already in the UFC. No disrespect to the recent casts of the show, but the reality is that the talent pool on Tough outside of the first 5 or so seasons do not represent the top talents in MMA that aren't already in the promotion. Not even close. And that's not a knock on the show or any of the contestants, it's just a completely different world we're living in now. The landscape of the sport has changed so much. The early days of Tough aren't even remotely comparable to what's going on in terms of talent today when it comes to the cast. The point is, everyone remembers Forrest Griffin being the first ever Ultimate Fighter winner because of that legendary and trailblazing performance versus Stephan Bonnar that was a major part of putting the sport on the map. But it's Diego Sanchez who's the original Tough 1 winner, scoring the first round TKO victory over Kenny Florian to win the honor and the 6-figure contract back in November of 2005. That's November of 2005. Fast forward 14 years, think about that. 14 years later, Sanchez is 37 years old and kicking the ass of a young up-and-comer that is 10 years younger than him. And looking amazing while doing it. It's not like it's some aged, slower, and lesser version of himself. He's moving and looks as good or better than ever before, which is something that essentially no other fighter can say for themselves. There are guys out there that have accomplished having longevity in this sport, but not without having to make adjustments to their tactics over time because of not having the same reaction time, chin, durability, and conditioning as they did in their younger years. But Diego is out here looking like the ageless wonder. And what makes this especially impressive is the fact that the fighting style that has made him a household name in this sport isn't exactly conducive to having a long and healthy career. In fact, it's the polar opposite. Sanchez's style is the type that usually causes premature ending to careers because of the willingness to absorb impossible amounts of damage in order to dish out damage. But here he is, having fought across 4 weight classes in the past 14 years. He won the Ultimate Fighter as a middleweight, then moved on down to welterweight at UFC 54 for 4 years until his eventual move to lightweight at UFC 95. Then after 2 wins, one of which included a fight of the year versus Clay Guida, Sanchez challenged the consensus best lightweight on the planet for a championship title. After coming up short, he went back and forth between welterweight and lightweight for the next 6 years until dropping down to featherweight, and on it goes. He is the eccentric type who was deep into the practice of yoga, both physically and spiritually, years before it ever became this trendy cliche that it is today. Sanchez has competed at 185 pounds, all the way down to 145 pounds and everywhere in between. Over the course of his 41 professional fight career, he has never lost more than 2 fights in a row. The intensity he has exhibited since day one has not subsided in the slightest, not even a little bit. The fact that he's maintained the same intensity and passion over all of these years through the ups and the downs is astounding. And the Nightmare is still here, still has a chin, still has elite level top control, and he's ready to take on the top talent of the UFC with showing no signs of slowing down. So a tip of the hat to Diego this week. Nobody knows how long this is going to go on for, but I hope we get a few more years out of the Nightmare yet. But whether we get another full chapter out of him or if he hangs up the gloves tomorrow, I'll always be thankful for what he's given the fans. Diego the Nightmare Sanchez is an inspiration.